the hunger and starvation we have seen has also been, we're seeing for the first time, the integrated food security phase classification. The IPC has said famine is underway in Gaza. That's based on a report that they have put out today, where they're saying famine is underway. So you can say that you don't believe that starvation is taking place in Gaza.
The only starvation in Gaza...
famine is now underway in Gaza.
No, the only starvation in Gaza is the starvation campaign that Hamas is behind it and the UN is behind it. And I have to admit, it was a very successful campaign. You know, they tried a few months ago to run a campaign about the hospitals, which we proved that it was a lie. And today they're running the campaign about the starvation.
What happens when a high-ranking politician tries to argue against real data on live television? You get a total meltdown. In the next few minutes, you are going to see the exact moment the official story completely falls apart. For months, media spokespeople have tried to sweep the suffering under the rug. They tell the public that everything is fine and that aid is moving smoothly. But the second an anchor stands up and reads the actual facts from the United Nations and top global groups, the entire defense system glitched. Watch how the official guest frantically tries to call everyone a liar, blaming the media and the aid groups for a massive campaign rather than answering for the real numbers on the ground. This is not just a standard news interview. It is the live crash of a corporate cover-up. This is the Trent Wire. We cut through the noise to uncover the truth. Now, let us get into it.
Israel agreed for a ceasefire many times. We said yes, Hamas said no. And if you don't believe us, you should ask the negotiators, the US, Egypt, and Qatar. And they will tell everyone that Israel is not the problem. Israel is not the obstacle for a ceasefire. So hopefully there will be a ceasefire before September. You know, we don't interfere on decisions of other countries. But with all due respect, all those declarations and empty speeches and conferences that we are seeing in the UN, they will not bring any progress to the region. We have to move forward. We have to bring back the hostages and get rid of Hamas. That is the only hope, not only for us, but also for the Palestinians.
Whether this is symbolic or not, a symbolic gesture, Ambassador Danon, we are now talking about Israel's closest allies, countries like France, now Britain, countries that you want to court like Saudi Arabia, also at this conference. That means that Israel has, for the last 22 months, because of its actions in Gaza, has in some ways had some of its closest allies turn to Israel and say, what you are doing is wrong.
We are on the same side. I would expect the UK and France to support our fight against Hamas and to put pressure on Hamas to accept the ceasefire. But what they are doing now, they are actually pushing Hamas to the other side, because some people in Hamas might think that now is not the time to move forward for a ceasefire, because look what's happening in Europe.
Well, many would say, look what's happening in Gaza, including many Israeli officials and prominent Israeli voices. And I'm just going to quote those to you. Ehud Olmert, Israel's former prime minister, just yesterday said, I've said it before and I haven't changed my mind, that there are things which are intolerable and unforgivable, which we are responsible for what happens in Gaza. Last month, he said, Israel is committing war crimes in Gaza, and that never since its establishment has the state of Israel waged such a war. Yesterday, two leading Israeli human rights groups, B'Tselem and the Physicians for Human Rights Israel, accused Israel of genocide in Gaza. They described a deliberate and systematic extermination of the health system in Gaza. Israeli-born genocide scholar Omer Bartov said today the IDF is primarily engaged in an operation of demolition and ethnic cleansing. These are not your allies. These are not other states. These are not people trying to, in your words, whether they're trying to encourage or appease Hamas. These are Israelis. This is an Israeli former prime minister. This is two leading human rights groups in Israel.
You can tell how uncomfortable the guest begins to sound as he scrambles to find an answer. Watch how his face drops the moment the anchor names his own country's former prime minister to prove the point. Watch his response.
So all those sources that you mentioned are radical forces, and we are a democracy. We allow free speech to everyone, even if you spread lies. And Prime Minister Olmert is lying. He doesn't have a clue of what's happening today. And those organizations you mentioned for years, they act against Israel, no matter what's happening on the ground. And we know that there is no genocide in Gaza. There are no war crimes. On the contrary, for us, the suffering in Gaza, it's a tragedy. For Hamas, it's a strategy.
Well, the images speak for themselves, Ambassador Danon, and it's something that President Donald Trump has also spoken to. He has said, you cannot fake the images that we're seeing. He says and has acknowledged that what he is seeing is starvation in Gaza. And I'm also going to quote Anthony Aguilar, a retired U.S. Special Forces officer who worked for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a body that Israel put in place because you said you couldn't trust the way in which aid was being distributed by the UN. He resigned because he said he witnessed war crimes and saw the IDF shooting at crowds of Palestinians.
So first of all, we should agree that the Humanitarian Foundation is doing an important work. And you can see from the results that in the area that you have those centers, you don't have any reports for starvation claims or other reports. And I wish we had more centers. And I hope there would be more centers.
Ambassador, it's being described by many as death traps. The surgeons that I've been speaking to say that those who return from that area have all sorts of gunshot wounds to their chest, to their testicles, children as young as 11, 12 and 13 years old. I mean, you can deny this, but this is someone who worked for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation saying he saw the IDF shoot at Palestinian civilians there. Over 1,000 people are believed to have died trying to get aid from those centers.
You know, you cannot deny the fact that the foundation actually distributed millions of meals.
I'm going to quote those...
Allow me to move forward with all due respect. We want to ease the suffering in Gaza. You know, today, 300 trucks entered Gaza. As we speak,
you know that's nearly not enough. You know that there are 6,000 trucks waiting at the border, and there are many saying that the food in those trucks have expired because you've just left them on the border. And when we talk about meals, Israel claims that somewhere upward of 87,000 meals have been distributed over 3 months. 90 million meals have been distributed over the course of the last 3 months. I'm just going to quote some of those numbers to you. On Monday, the 28th, which is just yesterday, 1.2 million meals were distributed in one day. There are 2 million people living in the enclave. So we're talking about half a meal to each person. And there is uncertainty about who these meals are being distributed to and whether the most needy are getting these meals, because there is no measure in place. There are no large organizations trying to distribute these meals. You're just relying on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is being
Hilda, with all due respect, please allow me to answer your claims. You keep reading and misleading the audience. The facts are that as we speak, you have more than 600 trucks that crossed the border, waiting in Gaza for distribution. And the UN is not distributing the aid. And instead of blaming Israel for everything, I would advise the UN to stop distributing lies and start to distribute the aid.
So are you saying that President Trump is lying when he says that the pictures speak for themselves, you can't fake this, there is starvation in Gaza?
Well, I think there is no starvation in Gaza. If there were incidents, we regret them, and the blame is on Hamas. But when you look at the number of aid that entered Gaza in the last few months, you understand that there is no problem of aid.
I've just quoted those numbers. It isn't even half a meal for a single person, and there is no clarity about whether that is going to the right people.
No, you know what you quoted. Excuse me, I have to correct you. You quoted the number from the GHF, from the foundation.
Correct.
But when you add to that the trucks that entered Gaza and the truck that entered Gaza during the ceasefire.
The anger you just saw on that screen has nothing to do with basic truth and everything to do with protecting a broken story. We need to connect the dots here and see exactly why this interview went off the rails. For months, the political elite have built a wall of words to hide a massive human crisis. They want the world to look away from the empty plates and the crowded borders. But the anchor did something mainstream television rarely does. She brought the actual receipts. She pointed out that the food arriving is not even half a meal for a single person. She noted that 2 million people are trapped in the enclave. When you bring real math to a debate, the official talking points instantly melt down. Notice the strategy used by the guest. He could not argue with the data, so he tried to tear down the people who gathered it. He called the United Nations chief a liar. He called human rights groups radical forces. He even dismissed the Global Food Program. This is the classic playbook of the ruling class. When the facts expose your actions, you do not change your actions. You just attack the referee. But the public is completely done buying the spin. People can see the photos on their phones every single day. They know you cannot look at a starving child and call it a media trick. The establishment demands that we trust their words over our own eyes. They want us to believe their small foundation is solving the problem, even while their own former workers resign in protest. Let us look at the verified live receipts, because the data exposes the absolute madness of this plan. While well-paid politicians sit in clean studios denying the crisis, the true cost is being passed to regular people worldwide. As of May 2026, global military spending has reached record highs, moving closer to $2 trillion. We have infinite money to build weapons and ship parts in the dark, but when working-class families ask why their own local schools, hospitals, and energy bills are ignored, the media tells them there is no budget left. They are using huge sums of public money to back policies that lead to absolute ruin. According to official reports, thousands of tons of vital food aid are left sitting at the border until it expires, simply because the entry gates are kept shut. It is a system that views human lives as simple data points and taxpayers as a blank check. The guest looked into the camera and saw a world that is no longer reading his script. The era of letting the political elite launder their violence through official statements is totally over. The mirror has been held up, and the media elite are absolutely terrified of the reflection staring back at them. I am Trent Williams. This is the Trent Wire, where we rip the script and follow the truth. If you are ready to stand up for facts over corporate talk, make sure to share this video. People over profits. Always. Peace.